The cold concrete felt like ice against Maya's back as she pressed herself deeper into the narrow alley. November had arrived with a vengeance, and the thin blanket she'd found behind a donation bin 3 weeks ago wasn't doing much to keep the chill away. Above her, the sky was that strange orange color cities get at night, reflecting all the lights back down on streets that never really sleep. She'd been living like this for 8 months now. 8 months of hiding, surviving, and trying to stay invisible. The alley behind Romano's bakery had become her spot because Mr. Romano, the old Italian man who owned the place, never chased her away. Sometimes, if she was lucky, he'd leave day-old bread in a bag by the back door. He never said anything to her, never made a big deal of it. Just left it there like he'd forgotten it, though they both knew the truth. Maya shifted her weight and pulled her knees closer to her chest. 19 years old, and this was her life. Some girls her age were in college, worried about exams and dating and what to wear to parties. She was worried about where her next meal would come from, and whether the shelter on 5th Street would have an open bed tonight. The thing about being homeless that nobody tells you is how exhausting it is. Not just physically, though, that's true too. But mentally, every single day is a battle. Where do you shower? Where do you go to the bathroom? How do you stay safe when you're sleeping? How do you find food? How do you keep your few belongings from being stolen? How do you wash your clothes? How do you charge your phone so you can maybe, possibly, hopefully find a job? Maya had learned the rhythms of survival. She woke up before dawn every morning, before the business owners arrived and before the morning rush began. There was a gas station about 6 blocks away where the bathroom was outside the building. She'd go there first thing, wash her face, brush her teeth with a toothbrush she kept in her backpack, and try to make herself look presentable. Looking clean was important. Looking homeless made people uncomfortable, made them look away, made them not want to hire you even for the simplest jobs. After that, she'd walk to the public library when it opened at 9. The library was her sanctuary. It was warm, it had bathrooms, and nobody bothered you if you sat quietly. She'd spend hours there, sometimes reading, sometimes just resting. She had a small notebook that she carried everywhere. In it, she wrote poetry. Words had always been her escape, even as a little girl. When things got bad, she'd write. When she felt alone, she'd write. When she felt like giving up, she'd write. Finding work was the hardest part. Who wants to hire someone with no permanent address? No phone number? No references? Maya had managed to get a few day labor jobs here and there. Cleaning jobs mostly, or helping someone move, or handing out flyers on street corners. The money was barely enough to buy food, let alone save for a deposit on a room somewhere. On this particular evening, her stomach was growling so loudly she thought people walking by might hear it. She hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon when she'd found half a sandwich someone had left on a bench in the park. Pride had died somewhere around month 3 of living on the streets. You learn quickly that survival matters more than dignity. She knew the soup kitchen on Maple Street served dinner from 5 to 7. Glancing at the church clock tower visible from her alley, she saw it was almost 5:30. If she hurried, she'd make it before the line got too long. Maya stood up, feeling her joints protest after sitting in the cold for so long. She folded her blanket carefully and tucked it behind a dumpster where she'd hidden a plastic bag with her other belongings. Everything she owned in the world fit in one backpack and one plastic bag. The walk to the soup kitchen took 15 minutes. Maya knew every shortcut, every safe route, every place to avoid. She'd learned which streets were dangerous at night, which corners had people who'd try to take advantage of a young woman alone, which alleys smelled like urine and which ones were relatively clean. The soup kitchen was housed in the basement of a Methodist church. Maya had been coming here 3 or 4 times a week for the past few months. The volunteers were kind, never judgmental, always treating everyone like they mattered. That was rare. Most people looked through homeless folks like they were ghosts, like they didn't exist at all. She joined the line outside, about 20 people already waiting. The crowd was the usual mix. Older men who'd been on the streets for years, their faces weathered and tired. A few women with shopping carts full of their possessions. Some younger guys who might have been veterans or might have just had bad luck. A couple of families with kids, which always broke Maya's heart. Seeing children going hungry, seeing them experience this life, it hurt in a way that was almost physical. Everyone was quiet, lost in their own thoughts. There wasn't much conversation in these lines. Hunger and exhaustion don't make people chatty. Maya stood with her hands in her jacket pockets trying to stay warm. The jacket was too thin for November weather, but it was all she had. The door opened at exactly 5:30, and the line started moving. Inside, the basement was warm and smelled like soup and bread. Long tables were set up with folding chairs, and volunteers stood behind a counter serving food. Maya grabbed a tray and moved through the line. A volunteer scooped vegetables onto her plate. Another added a bread roll. A third ladled soup into a bowl. That's when she saw him. Behind the counter, wearing a volunteer apron, was a young man she'd never seen before. He had kind eyes and dark hair that fell across his forehead. He was smiling at each person as they came through the line. Really smiling, not that fake customer service smile people give. When it was Maya's turn, their eyes met. For a moment, just a brief moment, something passed between them. Recognition maybe, though they'd never met. Understanding, perhaps. Whatever it was, it made Maya's breath catch in her throat. "Would you like an extra roll?" he asked, his voice gentle. "We have plenty tonight." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. He placed another roll on her tray and smiled again. "Have a good evening," he said, and there was something in the way he said it that felt genuine, like he actually meant it, like he actually cared whether she had a good evening or not. She found a seat at one of the long tables and ate slowly, making the food last. The soup was warm and filling, some kind of vegetable beef. The bread was fresh, soft on the inside with a crispy crust. She ate in silence, watching other people around her. Some ate quickly, desperately. Others savored each bite like she did. But her mind kept drifting back to the young man behind the counter. She glanced over and saw him serving others with that same genuine kindness. He talked to each person, made eye contact, treated them like human beings. That was rare. Most volunteers were nice enough, but they served food with a certain distance, a certain barrier between us and them. This guy seemed different. When Maya finished eating, she returned her tray and headed back out into the cold night. But something felt different now. For the first time in a long time, she felt something other than the constant weight of survival pressing down on her. She felt a tiny flicker of something she'd thought was dead. Hope. It was dangerous to feel hope. Hope led to disappointment, and disappointment hurt worse than anything. But as Maya walked back to her alley behind the bakery, she couldn't quite shake that feeling. She thought about the young man's kind eyes and gentle voice. She thought about how he'd looked at her like she mattered, like she was a person and not just another homeless girl to pity. That night, curled up under her thin blanket, Maya pulled out her notebook. By the dim light of a street lamp, she wrote, not about the cold or the hunger or the fear. She wrote about kindness, about warm soup and fresh bread, about a smile that felt genuine, about the smallest gestures that could make someone feel human again. She didn't know his name, didn't know if she'd ever see him again. But for tonight, it was enough to know that somewhere in this cold, hard city, there were still people who saw her, really saw her. And that made all the difference. Daniel couldn't stop thinking about her. 3 days had passed since his first shift volunteering at the soup kitchen, and that girl's face kept appearing in his mind at the strangest moments. During his psychology lecture, while studying at the library, even while brushing his teeth before bed. Those eyes, sad but somehow still holding on to something, pride maybe, or strength. He wasn't sure. He was 23 years old in his final year studying social work at the state university. His professors always said you couldn't save everyone, that you had to maintain professional boundaries, that getting too emotionally invested would burn you out. But they'd never told him what to do when someone's face haunted you, when you kept wondering if they were okay, if they'd eaten today, if they were safe. On Thursday afternoon, Daniel rearranged his schedule so he could volunteer again. He told his roommate he was doing extra credit work, which was partially true. His field placement required volunteer hours, and the soup kitchen counted. But that wasn't why he was going back. He wanted to see if she'd be there, wanted to know her name, wanted to do something, though he wasn't sure what. The soup kitchen started preparing at 4, and Daniel arrived early to help. Mrs. Chen, who ran the program, put him on vegetable chopping duty first. He worked alongside 2 other volunteers, cutting carrots and celery while they talked about their days. Daniel stayed quiet, his mind elsewhere. At 5:30, they opened the doors. Daniel took his position behind the serving counter, ladling soup into bowls, watching each face that came through. 10 people, 20, 30. His heart sank a little with each person who wasn't her. Maybe she'd found somewhere else to eat. Maybe she'd left the city. Maybe something bad had happened. Then she walked in. She was near the end of the line, head down, hands in her pockets. She looked tired, maybe more tired than last time. When she reached the counter, she kept her eyes on the tray, not meeting anyone's gaze. "Hi," Daniel said softly. "Good to see you again." Her head lifted slowly and recognition flickered in her eyes. She looked surprised, like she hadn't expected him to remember her, to notice her specifically among all the people who came through these doors. "Hi," she said quietly. Her voice was gentle, a little rough, like maybe she didn't use it much. "We have chicken noodle soup tonight," Daniel said, filling her bowl a little extra full. "And fresh bread. My aunt dropped off homemade cookies too, if you want to take a couple for later." Something softened in her expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "That would be nice. Thank you." After everyone had been served, Daniel's shift was technically over, but he hung around, helping clean up, watching as people finished eating and started leaving. The girl took her time, eating slowly, methodically. When most people had left, Daniel made a decision that his professors would probably say was crossing a line. He grabbed 2 cups of coffee and walked over to her table. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. She looked up, surprised again. People didn't usually choose to sit with the homeless, even in a soup kitchen. After a moment, she nodded. Daniel sat down across from her and slid one of the cups in her direction. "It's just regular coffee, nothing fancy. But it's hot at least." "Thank you," she said again. She wrapped her hands around the cup like she was trying to absorb its warmth. They sat in silence for a moment. Daniel knew he should say something, but everything that came to mind sounded stupid or condescending. Finally, he decided on the simplest approach. "I'm Daniel," he said. "Maya," she replied, looking at him directly for the first time. Her eyes were brown, deep and expressive, even though she seemed to be trying to keep her guard up. "Maya," he repeated, liking the way it sounded. "That's a beautiful name." She ducked her head, uncomfortable with the compliment. "It was my grandmother's name. I never met her, though." "I'm named after my grandfather," Daniel said. "Never met him either. My mom said he died before I was born, some kind of heart thing." This seemed to relax Maya a little. Shared information, equal exchange. Not him asking questions and her having to reveal things about herself. "Are you a student?" Maya asked, surprising him with a question of her own. "Yeah, at the university. Social work. Last year, finally. I'll graduate in May if I survive all my classes." He smiled. "What about you?" He saw her walls go back up immediately. Stupid question, Daniel thought. Obvious answer. "I mean before," he added quickly, trying to fix it. "Did you go to school?" Maya's fingers tightened around the coffee cup. "I graduated high school. Was supposed to start community college last year, but things happened." "Things have a way of doing that," Daniel said. He didn't push, didn't ask what things. Just let it sit there. They talked for another 20 minutes. Small talk mostly, nothing too deep. Maya mentioned she liked to read, that the public library was her favorite place in the city. Daniel told her about his classes, about his terrible roommate who never did dishes, about how his car had broken down last month and he'd been taking the bus everywhere. Normal conversation. Human conversation. The kind where you're just 2 people talking. Not a volunteer and a homeless person. Not someone with a home and someone without one. Just 2 people sharing coffee. When Mrs. Chen started closing up, Daniel knew their time was ending. He didn't want it to end. Didn't want Maya to disappear back into the night, back into whatever cold place she slept, back into being alone. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said as they both stood up. Maya tensed but nodded. "Would you maybe want to get coffee again sometime? I mean real coffee at a cafe or something. Just to talk. No pressure or anything." Maya looked at him like he'd spoken in a foreign language. "Why?" she asked simply. The question threw him. Why? Because he couldn't stop thinking about her? Because something in her eyes made him want to help? Because he felt drawn to her in a way he didn't fully understand? "Because you seem interesting," he said honestly. "And I enjoyed talking with you tonight. And because everyone deserves to have someone to talk to over coffee." Maya studied his face for a long moment, like she was trying to figure out if this was a trick, if there was some catch she wasn't seeing. Daniel kept his expression open, honest. "Okay," she finally said, "but I can't pay for anything." "My treat," Daniel said quickly. "Tomorrow? There's a cafe near campus, open late. Would 6 o'clock work?" Maya nodded slowly. "I know the one you mean. The place with the green awning?" "That's it. I'll meet you there at 6? "Okay," Maya said again. Then softer, "Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Maya, for saying yes." They parted ways outside the church. Daniel watched as Maya walked down the street and turned the corner, disappearing into the city night. He stood there for a moment, wondering what he was doing, whether this was smart, whether he was crossing boundaries he shouldn't cross. But then he thought about his sister, Lily. 3 years older than him, smart and funny and full of life until the mental illness hit in her early 20s. She'd ended up on the streets too, unable to hold a job, unable to navigate the complicated system of shelters and services. She died alone in an alley during a cold snap when Daniel was 19. Nobody had helped her. People had walked past her every day and nobody had stopped. Nobody had asked her name or bought her coffee or treated her like a human being who mattered. She'd been invisible until she was dead. And then suddenly everyone had opinions about how tragic it was, how someone should have done something. Daniel had promised himself he'd be the someone who did something. That's why he'd changed his major from business to social work. That's why he volunteered. That's why he couldn't walk past people on the streets without seeing Lily's face. The next day dragged by. Classes felt longer than usual. His part-time job at the bookstore felt endless. Daniel kept checking his phone for the time, willing it to move faster. He got to the cafe 15 minutes early, ordered a coffee he didn't really want just so he could sit at a table, and watched the door. 6 o'clock came. Then 6:10, 6:15. Daniel's heart sank. She wasn't coming. Of course she wasn't coming. She'd probably thought better of it. Decided it was too risky, that he might be some creep, that nothing good could come from meeting him. At 6:20, the door opened and Maya walked in. She'd clearly made an effort. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail. Her face was clean, her clothes were wrinkled but not dirty. She looked nervous, standing in the doorway like she might bolt at any second. Daniel stood up and waved. Relief flooded Maya's face when she saw him, and she made her way to his table. "I'm sorry I'm late," she said quickly. "The bus took forever, and then I couldn't remember if you said 6 or 6:30, and I almost didn't come because I thought maybe you'd forgotten or changed your mind." "I'm just glad you're here," Daniel said. "What would you like? Coffee, tea, hot chocolate? They have really good pastries too." Maya bit her lip. "Hot chocolate sounds nice." "I haven't had hot chocolate in a long time." Daniel went to the counter and ordered hot chocolate for Maya and another coffee for himself, plus 2 chocolate croissants because Maya looked like she could use a good meal. When he brought everything back to the table, Maya's eyes widened. "This is too much," she protested. "It's barely anything," Daniel said. "Please eat." They settled into conversation more easily this time. Maya told him about the library, about the books she'd been reading. Science fiction mostly, she said. Stories about other worlds, other possibilities. Daniel told her about his classes, about his plans after graduation, about maybe working with youth programs or homeless services. "Is that why you volunteer at the soup kitchen?" Maya asked. Daniel hesitated, then decided on honesty. "My sister," he said quietly. "She was homeless. She died on the streets 3 years ago." Maya's expression shifted, softened. "I'm sorry," she said. And the way she said it told Daniel she understood loss, knew its weight. Her name was Lily. She had schizophrenia, couldn't keep a job, couldn't navigate the system. She just fell through every crack and nobody caught her. Daniel's voice was rough. "I was too young to help her. Didn't understand what was happening until it was too late. Now I volunteer because I keep thinking maybe I can help someone else's Lily." Maya reached across the table and touched his hand briefly, a gesture of comfort. "She'd be proud of you," Maya said. "What you're doing." They talked for 2 hours. The cafe staff never rushed them, never gave Maya dirty looks even though she was clearly homeless. When they finally left, the night air felt less cold than it had before. "Can we do this again?" Daniel asked as they stood outside. "Same time next week?" Maya smiled for the first time, a real smile that lit up her whole face. "I'd like that." As Daniel rode the bus home that night, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose, yes, but also hope. Maybe he couldn't save everyone. Maybe he couldn't bring Lily back. But maybe he could help one person find their way off the streets. Maybe that would be enough. Maya had been working at the Riverside Hotel for 4 months when her past walked through the front door. She was on the 3rd floor, pushing her cleaning cart down the hallway, mentally running through her checklist for the day. 12 rooms to clean before her shift ended at 3. It was a Tuesday. usually a slower day, which meant she could take her time and do the thorough job she took pride in. Ms. Rodriguez had noticed Maya's work ethic and dedication. Just last week, she'd pulled Maya aside and told her she was being considered for a promotion to the training coordinator position, someone who would help teach new housekeeping staff. More money, better hours, more responsibility. Maya had felt like she was floating when she heard the news. Life had finally started to make sense. She had her small room at the group home. She had her job. She had Daniel, who'd become not just her boyfriend but her best friend, her anchor. She was even enrolled in 2 online community college classes starting in the summer. Everything was falling into place. She unlocked room 312 and pushed her cart inside, already mentally mapping out her cleaning routine. Bathroom first, then strip the bed, dust, vacuum, fresh linens. She'd gotten so fast at it that she could finish a room in under 20 minutes if she focused. Maya was scrubbing the bathroom sink when she heard the door open behind her. She turned, assuming it was a guest who'd forgotten something or come back early. The words, "I'll just be a minute," died in her throat. Standing in the doorway was him, the man from her 3rd foster home, the woman's husband. He was older now, grayer, but Maya would have recognized that face anywhere. Those cold eyes, that thin mouth that smiled so rarely, and when it did, it never reached his eyes. Raymond, that was his name. Raymond and his wife Helen, the ones who'd made her life hell for 3 years. The ones who'd taken vulnerable kids and treated them like servants. Who'd locked her in her room without food. Who'd made her feel worthless, invisible, less than human. Time seemed to stop. Maya stood frozen, soapsud still on her hands, staring at this ghost from her past. Raymond looked at her and she saw the exact moment recognition hit him. His eyes widened, then narrowed. A smile spread across his face, but it wasn't friendly. It was predatory. Well, he said slowly. Little Maya, I'll be damned, Maya couldn't speak. Her throat had closed up. Every survival instinct she'd developed on the streets was screaming at her to run, but her feet wouldn't move. Still cleaning, I see, Raymond said, stepping further into the room. Some things never change. Helen always said you were good at that, at least. Best at following orders. The way he said it made Maya's skin crawl. She forced herself to find her voice. I need to finish cleaning this room, she managed. You're not supposed to be here while I'm working. This is my room, Raymond said. I'm staying here on business. 3 nights. Imagine my surprise when I saw you in the hallway pushing that cart. He gestured at her uniform, her cart, everything. This is what you amounted to? A hotel maid? After everything we did for you? Everything you did to me, Maya wanted to scream, but fear had locked down her voice again. I should report you, Raymond continued, his voice taking on that cruel edge Maya remembered so well. Tell your boss about your past, about what a troubled kid you were, how you stole from us, lied about us, made up stories. I wonder if they'd keep you on if they knew. It was all lies. She'd never stolen, never lied about what happened in that house. But Raymond had always been good at twisting the truth, at making himself look like the victim. Something in Maya snapped. Maybe it was the 4 months of building up her confidence. Maybe it was having tasted independence and refusing to go back to being scared. Maybe it was knowing that Daniel believed in her, that she had people on her side now. Get out, she said, her voice shaking but growing stronger. Get out of this room right now, Raymond laughed. Or what? You'll call security, go ahead. I'm a paying guest. You're just the help. Who do you think they'll believe? Maya's hands were trembling. The walls felt like they were closing in. The bathroom suddenly felt impossibly small. A trap, just like the room they'd locked her in all those years ago. She pushed past Raymond, abandoning her cart, and ran. Down the hallway, past the elevator, through the door to the stairwell. She ran down 3 flights of stairs, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. She burst through the back door into the alley behind the hotel, the same alley where she sometimes took her breaks. Maya collapsed against the brick wall, gasping for air. Panic attack. She was having a panic attack. Her vision was going dark around the edges. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. All she could see was Raymond's face, hear his voice, feel that old helpless terror. She left. Just walked away from the hotel, away from her job, away from everything she'd built. Her feet carried her on autopilot through the city streets. She didn't know where she was going until she ended up there. The alley behind Romano's bakery. Her old spot. The cardboard was gone, cleaned up months ago, but the space was the same. Maya slid down the wall and sat there, just like she had hundreds of times before. This was where she belonged. The streets. She'd been stupid to think she could have a normal life, a job, a home, a future. People like her didn't get happy endings. They got Raymond showing up to remind them of who they really were. She sat there as afternoon turned to evening. Mr. Romano came out at some point, saw her, and left a bag of bread without saying anything. Just like old times. Maya didn't touch it. Her phone rang multiple times. Daniel, probably. She'd told him she'd meet him after work today. Ms. Rodriguez probably called too, wondering where she'd gone, why she'd abandoned her shift. Maya turned off her phone. Night fell. The temperature dropped. Maya pulled her jacket tighter around herself. That same thin jacket she'd worn through her months on the streets. She'd never thrown it away. Had kept it in the back of her closet at the group home. Some part of her had always known she'd end up back here. Around midnight, she heard footsteps in the alley. Maya tensed, ready to run if it was someone dangerous. But then she saw Daniel's face lit by the street lamp at the alley entrance. Maya, he breathed, relief flooding his voice. Oh, thank God. I've been looking everywhere. He rushed over and knelt beside her. What happened? Ms. Rodriguez said you just left in the middle of your shift. She's worried sick. I've been calling you for hours. I went to the group home, the library, the park, everywhere I could think of. Then I remembered you mentioned this place once. Maya couldn't look at him. You should go, Daniel. What? No, Maya, talk to me. What's wrong? Everything, Maya said, her voice flat. Everything's wrong. I thought I could do this, thought I could be normal, but I can't. This isn't my life. This, she gestured at the alley. This is my life. What are you talking about? Daniel sat down next to her, ignoring the dirty ground. You have a job you're great at. You have your room, you have plans for school. You have me. He was there, Maya said suddenly. At the hotel, Raymond from my foster home. He's staying there for 3 nights. He saw me, recognized me, threatened to tell them about my past, about what a terrible person I am. Daniel's expression hardened. What did he say exactly? Maya told him everything, the words spilling out in a rush. Raymond's threats, his lies, how small and powerless he'd made her feel again. When she finished, Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Maya, look at me. She didn't want to, but something in his voice made her turn her head. Raymond is an abuser, Daniel said firmly. Everything he said to you, all those threats, that's what abusers do. They try to make you feel like you're nothing without them, like you're worthless, like you'll never escape. But it's not true. None of it's true. You don't understand, Maya said. I can't go back there. I can't see him in the hallways, can't clean his room, can't pretend everything's okay. So you won't, Daniel said simply. You'll call Ms. Rodriguez tomorrow, explain what happened. She's a good person, Maya, she'll understand. And if she doesn't, if that job doesn't work out, we'll find another one. But you don't give up everything you've built because one terrible person from your past showed up. It's not that simple, Maya whispered. Yes, it is, Daniel insisted. It's exactly that simple. You have 2 choices. You can let Raymond win. Let him take away everything you've worked for, let him send you back to the streets. Or you can stand up, face this, and keep building your life. The life you deserve. Maya felt tears sliding down her face. I'm so tired, Daniel. I'm tired of fighting. Tired of trying, tired of being scared all the time. Daniel pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. I know you're tired. But you don't have to fight alone anymore. I'm here. Patricia's here. Ms. Rodriguez is here. You have people now, Maya. People who care about you, who will stand with you. They sat there in the alley for a long time, Maya crying into Daniel's shoulder while he held her and murmured reassurances. Eventually, her tears slowed, then stopped. What if I can't do it? Maya asked quietly. What if I'm too broken? You're not broken, Daniel said fiercely. You're one of the strongest people I know. You survived things that would destroy most people. You got yourself off the streets. You built a life from nothing. One bad person showing up doesn't erase any of that. Maya pulled back and looked at him. His eyes were red. Whether from emotion or the cold air, she wasn't sure. But they were full of love and determination. Come home with me, Daniel said. Not to my place, to your room at the group home. Sleep in your own bed. Tomorrow we'll figure everything out together. We'll call Ms. Rodriguez, we'll talk to Patricia. We'll make a plan. But tonight, just come home. Maya wanted to argue, wanted to insist she belonged here in this alley. But looking at Daniel's face, feeling his arms around her, she realized something. Home wasn't this alley. Home wasn't even a place. Home was wherever the people who loved you were. Okay, she whispered. Okay, let's go home. Daniel helped her to her feet. Her legs were stiff from sitting on the cold ground for hours. As they walked out of the alley, Maya looked back once. She'd spent so many nights here, cold and alone and scared. She'd thought those nights defined her, that they were all she'd ever be. But maybe Daniel was right. Maybe she was stronger than she thought. Maybe one person from her past couldn't destroy her future. Maybe she really could fight back. As they walked through the quiet city streets, Daniel holding her hand tight, Maya made a decision. Tomorrow she would call Ms. Rodriguez and explain everything. She would talk to Patricia about filing a report. She would stand up to Raymond, not by confronting him directly, but by refusing to let him have power over her anymore. She'd run away once. She wouldn't run again. This time she would fight for the life she'd built, because she'd finally realized something important. She deserved that life. She deserved happiness and safety and love, and she wasn't going to let anyone take it away. Maya barely slept that night. She lay in her small bed at the group home, staring at the ceiling, playing out conversations in her head. What would she say to Ms. Rodriguez? How would she explain running out on her shift? Would they believe her about Raymond, or would they think she was making excuses? When dawn broke, Maya was already awake. She took a shower, letting the hot water wash away the fear and doubt as much as she could. She put on clean clothes and looked at herself in the mirror. The girl staring back at her looked tired but determined. Not the broken girl from the alley last night. Someone stronger. Daniel had said he'd come over at 8 to go with her to make the phone calls. At 7:55, Maya heard a knock on her door. When she opened it, Daniel stood there with 2 coffee cups and a paper bag from the bakery. Thought you could use breakfast, he said with a gentle smile. And moral support. They sat at the small desk in Maya's room, eating croissants and sipping coffee while Maya rehearsed what she'd say. Finally, at 8:30, she dialed Ms. Rodriguez's number. Her hands shook as she pressed the call button. Riverside Hotel, Ms. Rodriguez speaking. Ms. Rodriguez, it's Maya. From housekeeping. I'm so sorry about yesterday. I know I left without explanation, and I understand if you're angry, but I need to explain what happened. There was a pause. Maya, I was worried about you. Are you all right? The concern in her voice made Maya's eyes prick with tears. She'd expected anger, disappointment, not worry. I'm okay now. But something happened yesterday. A guest at the hotel, he's someone from my past, from when I was in foster care. He and his wife, they weren't good people. They treated me badly, really badly, for 3 years. When I saw him in that room, when he started talking to me, I panicked. I just ran. I know that was unprofessional, and I know I should have come to you first, but I wasn't thinking clearly. Maya heard Ms. Rodriguez take a breath. This guest, is he still at the hotel? He said he's staying for 3 nights. That was yesterday, so 2 more nights. What room? 312. There was the sound of typing. Raymond Mitchell. Checked in Monday. Checks out Thursday morning. Maya, did he threaten you? Yes, he said he'd tell you about my past, make up lies about me. He's done it before, making himself look like a victim when really he was the one hurting people. He's good at it. Ms. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was firm. I believe you, Maya. In 4 months, you've been nothing but reliable, hardworking, and honest. One incident doesn't change that. And more importantly, I've worked in this industry for 20 years. I know what abusers look like, and I know what scared kids look like. I believe you. Maya felt something break open in her chest. Someone believed her. Someone in a position of authority. Someone who could actually help believed her. Thank you, Maya whispered. Here's what we're going to do, Ms. Rodriguez continued. You're going to come in today, but you're not going anywhere near the 3rd floor. I'll assign you to the East Wing, completely different section. Mr. Mitchell will never see you, and I'm going to have a word with our head of security about this situation. If he approaches any staff members asking about you, we'll handle it. You'd do that for me? Maya, you're a valuable employee. But more than that, you're a person who deserves to feel safe at work. That's non-negotiable. Can you come in at noon? We'll get everything sorted out. After she hung up, Maya looked at Daniel with wonder. She believed me. She actually believed me. Of course she did, Daniel said, squeezing her hand. Because you're telling the truth. And because anyone who's paid attention these past few months can see what kind of person you are. The next call was to Patricia, her case manager. Patricia's response was equally supportive, but she took it a step further. Maya, I think you should file a report about what happened in that foster home. I know it's been years, but abuse like that needs to be documented. Even if nothing comes of it legally, it creates a record. If Raymond and Helen are still taking in foster kids, they need to be investigated. Maya hadn't thought about that. The idea of other kids going through what she went through made her feel sick. How do I do that? Maya asked. I'll help you. We can go to the Department of Family Services together. File a formal complaint. They'll investigate. It won't be easy, Maya. You'll have to tell your story again, in detail. But I'll be there with you every step. Maya thought about the little girl she'd been at 15, scared and alone, too terrified to speak up. She thought about the other foster kids who'd been in that house, the ones she'd lost touch with after she left. Had they spoken up? Had anyone believed them? Okay, Maya said. I want to file a report. Not for me, but for whoever might be there now, or whoever might end up there in the future. Over the next 2 weeks, Maya worked with Patricia to document everything she remembered about her time in Raymond and Helen's home. The psychological abuse, the food deprivation, the isolation. It was painful, bringing up memories she'd tried to bury. But every time it got too hard, Daniel was there, or Patricia, or even Ms. Rodriguez, who'd become something of a mentor to Maya. The Department of Family Services took her report seriously. They told her they'd investigate, though they couldn't share details of their findings. Maya tried not to hope for too much. She'd been disappointed by the system before. But at least she'd done something. At least she'd tried. Raymond checked out of the hotel without incident. Maya never saw him again. She heard from security that he'd asked at the front desk about the cleaning girl with dark hair, but had been told firmly that staff information was confidential. After that, he'd apparently dropped it. Maya's panic about seeing him had been real and valid. But surviving those 2 days, going back to work, continuing her life while knowing he was in the same building, proved something to Maya. She was stronger than her fear. She could face her past and still move forward. Ms. Rodriguez, true to her word, promoted Maya to training coordinator at the end of May. The promotion came with a raise, better hours, and more responsibility. Maya would be teaching new housekeeping staff the systems and standards of the hotel. It meant she was good enough at her job to teach others. It meant she was valued. With the extra money, Maya was able to move out of the group home and into a small studio apartment in July. It wasn't much, just one room with a tiny kitchenette and a bathroom. But it was entirely hers. Her first real home since her mother had died 7 years ago. Daniel helped her move in, carrying the few pieces of furniture she'd bought from thrift stores. When everything was set up, they sat on her second-hand couch, eating pizza and looking around the small space. It's perfect, Daniel said. It's tiny, Maya corrected, but she was smiling. Perfect, he repeated, because it's yours. Because you earned it. Because a year ago you were sleeping in an alley, and now you're sitting in your own apartment. That's pretty amazing. Maya leaned her head on his shoulder. I couldn't have done it without you. You know that, right? None of this would have happened if you hadn't bought me coffee that day. You would have found a way, Daniel said. Maybe it would have taken longer. Maybe it would have been harder, but you would have done it. You're a survivor, Maya. That's who you are. In August, Maya started her community college classes. 2 courses, both online so she could work around her schedule. Introduction to Psychology and English Composition. They were harder than she expected, but she loved the challenge. She loved learning, loved having goals that extended beyond just surviving day to day. Daniel graduated with his social work degree and got hired at a youth outreach center working with homeless teens. He was good at it, Maya could tell. The kids responded to him, trusted him. He never preached or judged, just listened and helped where he could. He told Maya that many of the kids reminded him of her and of Lily. That's what kept him going on the hard days. Fall came, then winter. The 1-year anniversary of the day they'd met at the soup kitchen arrived. Maya insisted on volunteering there together, serving food to people who looked like she used to look. Hungry, tired, invisible. After their shift, Daniel and Maya went back to her apartment. She'd cooked dinner, or at least tried to. The pasta was slightly overcooked and the sauce was from a jar, but Daniel ate it like it was the best meal he'd ever had. I have something for you, Daniel said after dinner. He pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. Maya's heart started pounding. She knew what that size box usually meant. Daniel, just open it, he said, his own hands shaking slightly. Inside was a simple silver ring with a small diamond. Nothing fancy or expensive, but beautiful in its simplicity. "Maya," Daniel said, getting down on one knee right there in her tiny kitchen. "A year ago, I saw you in a soup kitchen line, and something in my gut told me you were important. I didn't know why then, but now I do. You're the bravest, strongest, most incredible person I've ever met. You've been through hell and came out still believing in goodness, still able to love and trust and hope. You inspire me every single day. I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" Maya was crying, happy tears this time. "Yes," she said, her voice shaking. "Yes, of course, yes." Daniel slipped the ring on her finger and stood up, kissing her while she laughed and cried at the same time. They held each other in that small kitchen, in that apartment Maya had worked so hard for, and everything felt right. Not perfect, because life was never perfect, but right. They decided on a small wedding the following spring. Just close friends, Patricia, Ms. Rodriguez, a few of Daniel's family members. They got married at the same park where they'd had their second coffee date, under cherry blossom trees in full bloom. Maya wore a simple white dress from a consignment shop. Daniel wore his one good suit. When they exchanged vows they'd written themselves, there wasn't a dry eye in the small gathering. "You taught me that home isn't a place," Maya said. "It's the people who see you, really see you, and love you anyway. You're my home, Daniel. You always will be." "You taught me that everyone deserves a second chance," Daniel said. "That kindness matters. That one person reaching out can change everything. You changed my life, Maya. You made me believe that maybe I could help honor Lily's memory by helping others. You made me better." After the ceremony, they had a small reception at a community center. Maya looked around at the people there. Patricia, who'd advocated for her. Ms. Rodriguez, who'd believed in her. Mrs. Chen from the soup kitchen. A few co-workers from the hotel who'd become friends. Daniel's roommate and some of his college friends. A year and a half ago, she'd had nobody. Now she had a whole community. People who cared about her, who celebrated with her, who'd shown up for her in big and small ways. Maya started a blog that summer about her experiences, writing under a pen name about homelessness, survival, and recovery. She wanted to give voice to people like her, to let others know they weren't alone. The blog grew slowly but steadily, and people started reaching out to her with their own stories. She also started volunteering at the youth outreach center where Daniel worked, mentoring teenage girls who'd been through the foster system. She could see herself in them. That same mix of defensive walls and desperate hope. She tried to be for them what Daniel had been for her, someone who saw past the circumstances to the person underneath. 2 years after they married, Maya graduated from community college with her associate degree. She'd taken it slowly, 1 or 2 classes at a time, balancing work and school. But she'd done it. Daniel threw her a surprise party, and Maya gave a small speech to everyone gathered. "When I was living on the streets," she said, "I thought my life was over before it really started. I thought I'd always be invisible, always be just another homeless person people looked past. But I was wrong. My life wasn't over. It was just beginning. And it began the day someone saw me. Really saw me, and decided I was worth a cup of coffee and a conversation." She looked at Daniel, who was trying not to cry. "I'm standing here with a degree, a career, a home, and a husband, because someone showed me kindness when I needed it most. And I'm telling my story because I want every person out there who feels invisible to know something. You're not invisible. You matter. Your life has value, and it only takes one person, one moment of kindness to change everything." Maya went on to get her bachelor's degree in social work, following in Daniel's footsteps. She specialized in youth services, working with kids aging out of foster care. She helped create programs to prevent them from ending up on the streets like she had. She fought for policy changes, better support systems, more resources. Her story, once something she'd been ashamed of, became her greatest tool for helping others. She spoke at conferences, wrote articles, advocated tirelessly. The homeless girl became a voice for the voiceless. Years later, Maya and Daniel bought a small house with a yard. They adopted a dog from a shelter. They had friends over for dinner parties. They lived a beautifully ordinary life that felt anything but ordinary to Maya, who'd once thought such things were impossible for someone like her. On cold November nights, Maya sometimes thought about that alley behind the bakery, about the cardboard shelter and the thin blanket and the crushing loneliness. Those memories didn't hurt as much anymore. They reminded her of how far she'd come, and they fueled her determination to help others make the same journey. She thought about Raymond too sometimes, without the old fear. She'd learned that he and Helen had been removed from the foster parent registry after the investigation. No more kids would suffer in that house. That knowledge brought her peace, but mostly Maya thought about the future. About the teenagers she was mentoring who reminded her of herself. About the program she was developing. About the policies she was trying to change. About the life she and Daniel were building together. The girl who'd once had nothing but a cardboard shelter and a notebook full of poetry had become a woman with a purpose, a voice and a love that had saved her life. Her story wasn't about luck or fate or even just kindness. It was about resilience, about refusing to let circumstances define you, about accepting help when it's offered and then turning around to help others. Maya's story was about love, yes, but it was also about courage. The courage to trust again after being hurt, the courage to try again after failing, the courage to believe in better days even when the present was dark. And most of all, it was about hope. Because hope, Maya had learned, wasn't naive optimism. Hope was the stubborn refusal to give up even when giving up seemed easier. Hope was looking at a life in an alley and daring to imagine something different. Hope was accepting a cup of coffee from a stranger and letting it change everything. Maya had once been a homeless girl with nothing but dreams written in a notebook. Now she was a woman helping other homeless girls write their own stories with different endings, better endings. And every day she woke up grateful for that November evening when a young man with kind eyes had offered her an extra bread roll and a smile. Grateful for every moment that came after. Grateful for a life she'd fought for, earned, and finally got to keep.